Hello, and welcome to another episode of Oh So Curious, where we are going to be talking a lot about The Creator, a sci-fi movie that I think it tried to do a lot, but and maybe it under-delivered in a few places. We also have to talk about Beyonce, and you might be wondering why Beyonce. Well, it looks like she is going to be bringing her concert to a movie theater near you very soon, similar to Taylor Swift. And then, of course, we have a bunch of DC Marvel stuff as we usually do, and we will look ahead to The Exorcist as well, coming out next week. And with me to talk about all of that and so much more, we have Angelina. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you? Things are looking up. We might have a strike info for tomorrow, so we're very excited about
Yeah.
that.
Yes, there's been news that the actors are coming back to the table so this week,
Hmm.
and that's going to be interesting. Hopefully, they can hash something out. I mean, maybe another 5-day marathon run at the negotiation table might be in store, or maybe
Maybe.
not.
We'll see.
Maybe like what they did with the writers kind of helped them iron out a few things, and that might help get things moving along really quickly. Of course, we have the video game strike happening now too, which
I haven't heard anything about that yet. I have no idea, but it makes sense.
uh, yeah, like SAG-AFTRA is striking against the video game companies, which it's to a lesser. I mean, it's not probably going to be as disruptive. So, once the main actor strike is over against the EMPTP, I think it's not going to affect as many people because yes, and the video game industry is big and large, but they don't have as big of an impact like as the movies and TV shows do. So hopefully, hopefully we'll have some good news. But until then, we have to talk about Beyonce's Renaissance tour. So Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is about to blow up the box
Hmm.
office. It's been projected to make somewhere between 100 and 150 million dollars in its opening weekend, and even the lowest projections that are coming in at around 85 million will more than break records for any kind of concert film ever released before. However, it looks like she's not going to be the only concert film that we might see this year in a movie theater. So AMC, hot off the heels of striking a deal with Tay Tay and her
Not Tay
entourage,
Tay.
they
Okay,
have
Dan.
decided to looks like this is an exclusive from
Mm.
Deadline, so we don't have a ton of details yet, and I'm sure we'll get more in the days to come. But it looks like that Deadline has been reporting that Beyonce's Renaissance tour, which is also making billions of dollars, and probably would have been making more headlines if it were not for Taylor Swift's tour being so huge. But now, if you haven't had a chance to go see the Renaissance tour in person, you can go see it in the movie theater. And on December 1st, they'll be starting to air it in a movie theater near you. Now, we don't know too much about their plans for whether it's going to be a weekend only release schedule, like with Taylor Swift,
Mm.
which won't be playing during the week, only in the weekends. And we don't know how many weeks it's going to be playing for just yet. Taylor Swift's
It's kind
Eras
of an
Tour,
interesting move. Only
it
weekends,
is.
which I
Yeah,
guess
because it
it's just because they
makes
want to limit the amount of theaters it takes up.
it might be that, but it might also be like an exclusivity thing. I think that
Mm.
might have to do with, driving up demand by kind of choking off the flow. Because if, for example, you release it on the weekend and the weekdays, it may die down in like a week or so. But
Yeah,
like
that's true.
now, if you can't catch it on like the 2 or 3 days on one weekend, and now you only have 2 more weekends to do it, you're more likely to kind of get the tickets. Or if you see it one weekend and you want to go see it the next weekend again, if you're a
I'd
fan,
like
like
to talk to Taylor Swift's marketing person because they've done just such an incredible job these last,
yes,
15 years at this point. Like, it's insane, if not more. I remember Drew came out when I was in fifth grade, which would have left me at what, like 11 years old? So, yeah, her career is like 15 years old at this point, like, if not
it's
longer, because she was writing songs before
yeah,
that. Whoever her marketing person is like very,
yes,
very intelligent. That woman
no,
is
absolutely.
very wealthy.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not surprising to see that Beyonce is kind of going in the same direction. And to be fair, it's not like the first concert film that Beyonce has done either. And
Mm-hmm.
I've actually watched a couple of her older concert movies, not necessarily in a movie theater, but I can tell you, like, if you put it on a big screen and with good sound, like, it's an experience. And if you were
Yeah.
watching it with a bunch of other people around you, I bet you it's gonna make it even better. Now, it's probably not going to be, the thousands of people you might go see it in a stadium with, But at the same time, you may not be spending like $6,000 like you would just to see her far, far and
Oh my god,
away.
my friends actually went to the Beyonce
So,
concert and they spent
yeah.
thousands of dollars to do so. I
Yeah.
was like,
Not to mention getting there, staying overnight at a hotel, like all of that stuff that goes along with it. It's a huge
who is
investment.
staying in a hotel overnight? Is that just you because there's nobody playing near you?
No, because if you're not in a big city, like for example, if you want to go to the one in New York, like I'm in Connecticut, and she didn't
Oh.
really come to a venue in
So
Connecticut, and
yeah,
she wanted to go to New York.
I was making
Yeah,
fun of the fact that you live in Connecticut,
it's
but that got missed.
yeah,
But that's okay. That's okay.
yeah.
No, I do kind of forget about
Not all
that
of us are
stuff because
lucky to live in LA, you know.
I
So
lucky? Am I lucky?
no, no,
I don't know. I have a
I
question.
should have stated that differently. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was like, is she lucky? She cries at her rent prices and the amounts of homeless people that try to hit her dog on walks. It's a little insane out here. Um, but I will count myself lucky because I do live in LA. It's good. We have a lot of things very close to us. But I don't know if I've ever I guess I traveled for one concert, but I never really thought about that adding into the expenses. With Beyonce, I do think a lot of people traveled in to go see her, so that's so and Taylor Swift, I'm sure. But what kills me about those two things back to back is it a coincidence? Or
Probably
is
not.
it another VMA standoff? Like I have so many questions about that. I'm like, I don't
That's a good
know.
question. That is a good question. Although I don't think it's a coincidence from a business standpoint, because AMC certainly is looking at this and thinking, well, if we can make lightning strike twice, like
Yeah.
that would be all that much better for us from a monetary
What
standpoint.
is the releasing schedule? Is it
So
staggered?
no, we don't know yet exactly like how many days or how many screens it's
Mm-hmm.
gonna play on. But like ultimately, when it came down to the Eras tour, they initially announced like oh, we're gonna be releasing it on these few days, and then people just the demand went through the roof, so they just kept adding more days and more
Mm-hmm.
screens. So I feel like once the pre-sales start, then we might get a better idea because
Of when,
they'll realize
yeah.
where the volume is. And I'm sure it's also going to be one of those things where AMC is going to be distributing it. So that's not just going to be within AMC. You can
Mm-hmm.
go to Cinemark, you can go to a Regal, a
Yeah.
Showcase, whichever other theater is near you. It's going to start on December 1st. Now, December 1st is pretty much a dead time of the year. There's not really a whole lot of big movies or new movies coming out that time. It's kind of like a few weeks before Christmas. So not a lot of big movies are in theaters, and some of the big ones don't come out until like Christmas week. So it's a bit of a dead zone, but it is still 2023. So for AMC, they can kind of end the year on a high note, especially if movies like Aquaman 2 don't do very well, and we know that Dune has moved out of the theatrical release calendar.
Yeah.
So on December 1st, there are two other movies that are currently in the path of Beyonce, and so I wanted to ask you.
Beyonce's way. How could they?
Taylor Swift moved four movies out of her way, including The Exorcist Believer, which we're going to be
Yes.
talking about next week. But now on December 1st, there's a movie called Bike Riders from
Mhm.
20th Century Fox, which has like Tom Hardy in it, Jodie Comer. It's directed by Jeff Nichols. Austin Butler's in it. They already put out a trailer. There's also John Woo's first U.S. film in like 20 years called Silent Night. And that's from Lionsgate. That's also coming out on December 1st.
Mhm.
So what do you think? Like, do you think that both those movies are gonna like move out of the way of Beyonce, especially if the
I don't
pre-sales
think so.
start to hit those levels of like
I
Taylor
don't
Swift
know. I
numbers?
don't think so because it goes into the holidays, and I feel like typically the holidays, like more and more people start to go to the movies. I also just don't know, as you said, it's going to be very specific kind of demographic. Like I felt the same way about Taylor Swift. I thought it was interesting that all four of those movies moved. I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very specific demographic that are buying these Taylor Swift and Beyonce concert tickets. You know what I mean? It's very
Well,
exclusive. I don't
I will
necessarily
say that
think.
there's two of the four movies that moved were rom-coms, and one of them was horror. And I forget what the fourth one, if I'm even
The
remembering what
horror
the
one
fourth
makes
movie.
me still like The Exorcist being moved. I still was just like, was that
Well,
necessary?
no, but
No.
it makes
But maybe
sense
they were
because
also
the
hoping that the strike would be over.
That's true, but like also I think it makes sense from a demographic standpoint because like when it comes to rom-coms or horror movies,
Hmm.
they kind of target the same demographics that like Taylor Swift's concert and film would.
Okay.
You're sort of like talking about like that, 18 to 24, 18 to 34 sort of a range, or and a
Yeah,
lot of
I guess
those like
that's true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so especially like The Exorcist Believer, I think they were like more female leaning anyway. So I think their expectation was we're not going to do any business on this weekend. We might as well just get out of the way. In fact, like I think one of the movies they took it off the schedule and then now it's like coming out in February of next year.
Like,
So
they were
they
like,
just couldn't
just
find a
kidding.
better spot.
We're just gonna
Yeah.
wait. We'll be back. Um, yeah, and I feel like Beyonce and Taylor Swift's demographic does like severely overarch. I would say that maybe Beyonce caters to like a bigger age group than Taylor Swift does. I feel like people
That's
that
true. Yeah.
like I feel like she's a broader demographic than Taylor Swift might, although T Swifties don't come for me. I understand everyone is obsessed and in love with Taylor
You're
Swift.
just
Don't
inviting comments
don't
now.
come for me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but didn't we get like a T Swifty comment on one of our last things? And I was
We
like,
got many. We got many, many comments. I think
don't be mean to
you're
me,
just asking for
people.
trouble at
I'm
this point.
sorry.
Yeah.
um, so I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily think these movies need to move. One of them is like a sci-fi. One of them is like a thriller, right?
Well, Silent Night, I think. Yeah, you're right. And then Bike Riders, you have more of a thriller drama kind of a thing.
I'm
It's
like, I don't know if I'm in the mood to go see a sci-fi thriller, I'm gonna go see that. And if I'm in the mood to go see Beyonce, I'm gonna go see Beyonce. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily think they have too much competition going on there. Like, they're very different vibes. Um, I feel like they will not move. Should we bet on it? It's just like,
it's yeah, no, I mean, we'll see. This is news like
yeah.
coming out now, so
Well,
we
also,
don't
they
know the
just
reaction's gonna
announced
be.
it. They don't even know the release date 100%
Yeah,
yet. Deadline is literally just reporting on like the facts that they
yeah,
know. And they even kind of said in that Deadline article, like, we don't have many facts. This is
yeah,
speculation off of the facts that we do have. So
right.
we'll see. Overall, I didn't get to go see Beyonce or Taylor Swift, and I was really sad about missing Beyonce. So I think I will absolutely go see this concert.
Yeah, it's certainly a much more economical way to
Mm.
experience the concert. By the way, I just wanted to ask you just very quickly, do you think this is starting to become a bit more of a like part of the business model? If you're gonna do a mega tour, then now you do have to do a concert film release in theaters and like because especially with the kind of situations we've been getting recently, like I think there was I forget the name of the artist, but I recently somebody announced another tour and
Mm.
Ticketmaster was like starting to already warn people like beware, you're most likely not going to get the tickets because the demand is so high.
Okay,
But
first they need to fix the ticket poaching. There are ways to solve this, and for some reason
yeah,
Ticketmaster won't, and I don't get
well,
it.
because they're a total monopoly. I think that's a
I'm
whole
like,
different. They're probably going to eventually get sued by the Department of Department of Justice or the FTC, whoever
I mean,
monitors regulates
fire everyone.
monopolies.
Get rid of
Yeah,
them. That's like so. I want to use the F word, but like I understand we're on air, and so I'm just gonna say
sure.
effed up
Yes.
just to put it there. But like Ticketmaster is a whole different beast in itself. With that being said, I think it allows people. They've been taping concerts for forever. Remember the Live Aid taping? I mean, that is still probably like one of the most watched clips of Freddie Mercury. It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
last concerts he's ever played. They've been taking
Yeah.
concerts for forever, for whatever reason. It's actually funny because the first people I really remember doing tapings of their concerts were Disney stars, like Disney Channel stars,
Like
Miley
the Hannah
Cyrus, the
Montana and so
Jonas
yeah.
Brothers. I think even Demi Lovato had one when she was still
I think
on.
Justin Bieber did one.
So it's not a new thing. What is
But
new
like,
is that
Beyonce has done it
moving
before
to
too. Yeah.
theaters. I haven't seen that. That's kind
When
of
I was
interesting.
I was researching this because for the Taylor Swift one
Mm,
recently, and it looked like they like some of the other big ones in the past. I mean, the numbers don't compare. Like, you
hmm.
know, like 85 million would blow those numbers out of the water. And it looks like Taylor Swift will do way more than that. But like Justin Bieber and like I think one of the Hannah Montana ones, like they're the ones who
Yeah.
kind of like sit at the top of the pile from like
Yeah.
in terms of the most money made. But the most money made is still like well below like 100 million, 50
Hmm.
million. So like they've never been quite like theatrical attractions.
Hmm.
But what I feel like is now with like if for example if they hit with two in a row with Taylor Swift and Beyonce. Now granted, these are two of the most popular tours of all time,
Hmm.
like ever, and like billions of dollars. We know the numbers are crazy. So that might be like proportional to like the kind of numbers they do in a theater because the demand is there. And so you can't necessarily expect that to happen with every new tour that somebody does and makes a tour concert film.
Yeah.
But I do think this might become something like where, for example, like if like NSYNC does a reunion tour
They will
and they do
absolutely
limited
take
dates,
that. 1000%.
like, and you then put it out in a movie theater, I bet you like, and again, you like you mentioned that Beyonce has this audience, like a larger audience
Hmm.
across multiple generations. You can only say the same. You can say the same about NSYNC. Like I bet you there's so many people who would not want to go, who wouldn't necessarily spend thousands of dollars to go see Taylor Swift live
Hmm.
because they're like, well, she probably will do a couple of more tours. She's got a lot left in her career, hopefully. Whereas NSYNC, if this is our only chance to ever see them again live, I bet you,
Not
or for the
ever
next one, you
again.
go
They're
see it
not
in a movie,
that
right?
old, Dan.
No, I'm
My
saying, well, but
goodness.
no, it's not like NSYNC are like actively like developing new
That's
albums. You know
true.
what I
They're
mean?
not.
Like that's it's like to go see
It's a
them in a live
novelty.
concert.
It's like a reunion
Yeah,
tour.
I
It's
so I
like when
do.
Fleetwood
Yeah,
Mac has gone on their like 800th final tour, and I've still
yeah,
missed them, which makes me sad. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. This could definitely be a trend, but you also have to think about the amount of money it takes them to like film this, and that comes out of their. So unless they really estimate to make a certain amount of money, I don't know if it makes sense for
Yeah,
everybody.
but I bet you it doesn't cost much of anything at all, like relatively speaking, to film it. Like they could probably
Really?
pay for the cost of filming and the entire
Yeah.
post-production process for one of the concert films based on just one of the dates that they run at a
Hmm.
stadium. Like it's just because the amount of money like they make, like if somebody sitting like 1,000 yards away is paying $6,000, I can only imagine somebody who can touch the stage, like what they are paying for these tickets. And I know that some of the prices are inflated and not all the money makes it back to the artists and their representation. So even still, the cost of making these movies, they're practically just all they're doing is you're just shooting stuff that's already happening. You're not really,
Yeah.
and maybe you have a certain plan, but like I bet you a lot of this is done in post production where they figure out, okay, this is the good angle, this is how we're gonna mix the sound, blah blah blah. So they probably don't cost much of anything to make. And I know there's technically a director that's credited for these concert
Hmm.
films, like who directs it, but it's not really
It's
directing in
like
the
post production
traditional
edit
sense. It's like
directing.
a documentary more so than like a narrative film. But anyway, I do believe like if Beyonce has as big of a hit theatrically on her hands as it's Taylor Swift certainly looks like she
Hmm.
will, then it is possible that if you get another mega tour like this in the near future, that AMC goes to them and say, hey, look, this is what we pulled off with Beyonce and Taylor Swift. Would you want to do this? I mean, and especially if they can give them a lucrative enough of a price, like of a share of the revenue, then I think they could potentially convince them to make it happen. Even if, especially if it is just like, hey, it's just in limited term engagement. You do it 4 weekends, that's it, and
Yeah,
and
that's
and
true.
that should be enough. But guys, let us know in the comments below what you think. Beyonce coming to a theater near you with her Renaissance tour, and on December 1st onwards. Of course, if you have gone to see her live, then let us know if you're excited to see her in a theater or if you're going to go see the Eras tour. We know that's coming out really, really soon. So let us know in the comments below what you think about Beyonce joining the ranks in the movie theater, and like and subscribe for more content like this. All right, so let's talk about the Argylle trailer. This movie is looking really good. Let's just
It
say that.
looks so cute. I'm excited. The cat got me. The cat really got me.
You know the Henry Cavill picture, like playing the character of Argyle,
Hmm.
that's been on the internet for at this point, like at least a year, if not longer, when we first heard about it. And people were like, "Whoa, that looks different!" And then they released like a teaser trailer, like that was like 40 seconds, basically teasing the main trailer, like I think a few weeks
Yeah.
ago. So it wasn't like very long ago, and then now we just got the full trailer,
Hmm.
and it looks amazing. It looks hilarious. It looks original. It looks completely like something that Matthew Vaughn would do, because Matthew Vaughn is known for doing the kind of movies where it's similar to what you've seen before, but it's slightly off kilter. Like with the
Yeah.
Kingsman movies, it feels like you're watching James Bond, except it's funner, or like it's meant to not be
Yeah.
taken as
The stakes
seriously.
are lower
It's
somehow.
yeah, it's like it's almost like you're tripping and watching James Bond, so you're not exactly watching James Bond, but you're watching something that's very similar. And his cinematography style is also really fun because the camera is always very dynamic, and you can tell in this trailer like the camera is doing some funky things, and there's some action set pieces. You've got John Cena in there, you've got Dua Lipa, of course, Henry Cavill, as we talked
Mhm.
about. You've got Samuel Jackson, Catherine O'Hara. You've also got Sam Rockwell, and of course, it looks like the main character in the story is played by Bryce Dallas Howard. So,
Yeah.
A-list cast. It
I
looks
haven't
like
seen
they've
her
got
in anything in a
plenty.
little bit too, so it's kind of nice to get her back. I haven't seen her in anything
Absolutely,
since Jurassic World, right?
yeah. She's been doing a lot more directing of late.
Oh yeah.
So, and she's directed some Star Wars TV series and stuff. But yeah, she hasn't really been on camera as much. And you know what? Like, power to her. She's a good director. Actually, some of the her episodes of The Mandalorian are some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. So
Oh,
I
see?
think she's very talented.
I still need to watch The Mandalorian. I think that maybe I start that today.
Yeah, season three is probably not as good as season one and two. Season one
Mm,
still is my favorite. It's kind of like that they had lightning in a bottle, and then they had like some really talented people both in front of and behind the camera, which is the same of this movie. Now, some behind the scenes details. Argylle, actually, the movie that Matthew Vaughn had been kind of pitching around to studios, and then Apple bought the rights for $200 million. So they've already went into
wow.
it for 200
Yeah.
million, like just on the get go. And now we know that Apple is committed to like this multi-year billions of dollars, like over the course of 10 years, to releasing movies theatrically, giving them a proper theatrical run, and
Mhm.
then bringing them onto Apple TV Plus so that their prestige and profile gets raised that much more. And right now they've got 3 movies in the works, and Argylle is coming out in February of 2024. It's one of those 3. There's like Napoleon
Mhm.
and Killers of the Flower Moon. So these movies, it looks like they're investing the right amount of money. They're giving them the right kind of platform. Universal is going to distribute Argylle, whereas it seems like Apple's plan is they're going to go individually on a picture by picture basis and find out whichever studio gives them the best distribution deal for each picture. Because Napoleon is going to be distributed by Columbia, which is like Sony, and
Yeah.
then Killers of the Flower Moon is being distributed by Paramount. So 3 different movies, 3 different distribution studios, all Apple are being funded by Apple, and they all look fantastic. But like
Yeah.
just Argyle alone, I was like thoroughly entertained. This is the trailer you can watch
The
on
trailer is
repeat
so
and
good.
not
It keeps me
get
on my
bored.
toes. And no,
Yeah.
it definitely the cat is like added humor, which I
Hmm.
love. I love animal humor. There's something about
Hmm.
it that you just like can't beat.
Yeah, it's like
long as
if
no
you watch
animals are harmed in the
Paddington or
making,
yeah,
we're good.
yeah.
Morris, do you want to say hi? I was like, my dog is like in the corner. He's like, huh? No, I am a sucker for animal humor. It just really gets me. But also, we see some big players in this movie that I haven't really seen in a long time, like the espionage. What is his name? I forget. I haven't seen him in anything since like the early 2000s. Sam Rockwell.
Really?
So
What?
I
I was
haven't seen
gonna.
Sam Rockwell in anything in a long time.
Oh no way. Okay, I can point out like 5 movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, but we've got some
Yeah.
like big players in this movie. We've got like Sam Rockwell, we've got Henry Cavill. I'm so happy because it seems like Dua Lipa is not gonna take a front row seat on this.
Yeah.
I'm
This is
sorry,
yeah.
you guys. I like Dua Lipa's music. The whole like pop stars becoming actors. We have seen it before, and it usually just doesn't end well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they tend to go through their phases, like we were talking about it
Yeah.
earlier, where like Justin Timberlake had been through his phase. I mean, I
Remember when
think,
Britney Spears went through
oh
hers?
yeah,
Christina Aguilera, I feel like I still love Burlesque. That was a phenomenal movie. She definitely has acting chops. And that was the thing too, is like a lot of those Disney stars, like Justin Timberlake, they were all a part of the Mickey Mouse Club, right? So they all sang, danced, and acted. And I feel like Disney was like really a big part of making that sort of like triple threat very young. Dua Lipa is one of the newer pop stars that's not affiliated with Disney on any level. She was developed by Warner Brothers, I want to say, from the age of
maybe
like 14. So they found her really young, and they developed her as this like pop cultural icon. But I don't think she has
Yeah.
any acting training at all. So I'm kind of like,
Well, I mean, she can be on camera for limited work, and I think, like
yeah,
she's there
yeah.
obviously because of her looks and because of just the way she appeals to I
Mm-hmm.
think well, how would you describe it? The glamour side of this, the world of like James, the glamorous side of the spy world that they're trying to depict here. Because clearly part of this movie looks like it's sort of a parody of the James Bond
Yeah.
genre of movies. And the one thing that I kind of stuck out to me watching this trailer, especially the moment where John Cena grabs Dua Lipa like off the motorcycle.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, weren't you guys in Barbie? Like you were the two mermaids? Like that was kind of funny. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, that's
Oh,
an
that is
interesting
funny. That's
crossover.
cute. See,
Yeah,
that's something you wouldn't remember unless you've seen Barbie like 8 times, like Dan
that's
has, you
true. That's
guys.
entirely true. Another Warner Brothers movie, by the way. So Argylle is a fantastic movie from the looks of this trailer. I'm sure we're gonna get at least one more trailer before
Mm-hmm.
February when this movie comes out. And like Killers of the Flower Moon looks like
I'm
amazing,
so excited for
probably
Killers
the
of the
best
Flower
trailer of the
Moon.
year. Like that
Mm-hmm.
that trailer hit me. I'm like, it has that uneary dread
Yeah.
that kind of builds up, and it's. I just haven't. I feel like we haven't seen that kind of a movie since maybe like The Departed, where this is gonna take place over the course of years within the movie,
Yeah.
and you just see like some these main characters go through so much, and Apple. It just looks like they got their heart in the right place. They're putting their money where their mouth is, and they're really committing to the theatrical distribution model, and they're putting out quality stuff. Like it seems like every other show that I watch these days on TV, it's an Apple TV Plus show,
Yeah.
and they never miss. And it looks like with these movies, they've got the same philosophy: quality, 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 all across the board, and
Yeah.
regardless of what genre. Because like whether it's Napoleon, which looks like a historical epic, kind of a period piece, and Killers of the Flower Moon is sort of in a similar genre, but also maybe more like a western.
Napoleon is Timothy Chalamet?
No, no, Napoleon with Joaquin Phoenix, Vanessa Kirby.
Oh, Joaquin Phoenix. There we go. I was like,
Yeah, it's Ridley
uh,
Scott's directing it. That the
oh,
trailer
that's
for
gonna
that
be
looks fantastic too. By the way,
so
if you
good.
haven't seen it,
It's gonna be so
it
good. I haven't seen it.
yes, and they've got some like battle sequences in that movie that look like they're on some epic scale, and it looks like they shot a lot of that stuff on in camera. And with Argyle, I mean, Matthew Wan's got the track record with the Kingsman franchise, especially. So he loves to make James Bond movies that are not James Bond movies, and
Yeah.
even with Baby Driver,
It's
I think
fun.
he's got he's got a style that I think is unique in a time where a lot of directors their styles don't tend to like help them stand apart. There's only a handful of directors out there where you can watch a movie and be like, oh yes, I know who made this film, and
Hmm.
Matthew Wan's one of those people. So I'm excited to go see this movie in the theater when it comes out, and then hopefully go watch it on Apple TV Plus when it releases online. So let us know in the comments, guys. What do you think about Argyle? Is this a trailer that you are now excited to see the movie after having seen it? Is Henry Cavill's here something that is going to become a trend? How much of Henry Cavill are we even going to see in the movie? They do kind of hint that, oh, it's time for you to meet the real Agent Argyle. They kind of hint that maybe the fictional world that is being created by the writer in the film might actually be real in some way within the film itself. So who knows? But let us know in the comments what you guys think. What is the story going to be like? Is this movie going to be good? And like and subscribe for more content like this. So right now, let's kind of switch gears and let's talk about a movie, a sci-fi movie. The Creator is a film that I have been anticipating for weeks, for months. It's a movie that I really thought could be groundbreaking and could do something that a lot of other sci-fi movies have not done in quite some time, and probably my most anticipated sci-fi film since Interstellar. But I went to see it this week, and I saw it twice, 2 days in a row. I went and saw it, and
That's a lot.
after that, I just my opinion is still so mixed. There's a lot that I want to say, but I also decided to look up some other reviews, and I got to be honest, like I agreed with a lot of what some of the other critics are saying, and this critic score on Rotten Tomatoes sitting in the 60s, and I think that's an accurate assessment. But before I dive into my take, Angelina, what did you think about the movie?
Big size. I feel kind of similarly. Like there's just something really conflicting about the movie. Like I think so many parts of it were so good, and I think so much of it could have been so much better. To be fair, they did make this money fairly budget
like
like
80 million
friendly.
dollars, which
I
like a
mean,
movie. You watch this movie,
yeah,
you think they would have made it for like 150 million because that's how we usually
yeah.
see like a Marvel movie because it looks like a Marvel or a Star Wars film, particularly like a Star Wars film. But they made it for only like 80 million, so that is kind of
And
amazing.
right off the bat, Gemma Chan's character outshines that of what is his
John
name?
David Washington.
Yeah, John David Washington. Um, John David Washington's, that's the actor's name, no?
Yes, he's got three first names. Yes,
I was like, wait, what?
he plays Joshua in the movie. Yeah, his
There we go.
character
That's
name.
the name
Yeah,
I was looking
Joshua.
for. Sorry, guys. As we know, she's historically bad with names. Um, so we end up finding out that like Gemma Chan's character is Nirmata, like she is the new Nirmata at the very end, but from the very get
Spoiler
go,
alert. Oh.
oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'm sure if people have seen this
Normally
movie,
that's you.
yeah, that is one. That's one of
That's
the thing
normally
is
not
though, it's
me.
it's it's a very underwhelming twist. So like even though it's a bit of a spoiler, it
Yeah,
just if you
that's
knew the
true.
spoiler, it doesn't really affect your experience of watching the movie because it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
So we end up finding out at the end of the movie, like she is Nirmata, which it doesn't really signify, right? Like they end up thinking it was a way bigger deal than it was.
Yeah.
However, from the very opening scene of this movie, her character, her acting, her everything, her essence on screen outshines that of Joshua to a point where I literally was like, has this man, did they just rush through the taping of this scene? Like, why is he so awkward? Like, he just seemed so awkward in so many of these scenes. And like, I feel like there was an emotional depth that he didn't reach that the kid did. The kid was great, but because he was kind of mediocre, it like, I don't know, there were so many points of this movie that were like almost there and he didn't follow through. And obviously it doesn't just have to do with him, right? That also has to do with editing, it has to do with directing, it has to do with screenwriting, it has to do with like what's going on behind the scenes, in front of the camera. Like there's so many factors to getting the best performance from an actor. And half the time, it isn't really them. It's really how they edit the scenes, because there were probably takes in which he really gave, and they chose not to go with him for whatever reason. But there was something about the way that this movie was received that just fell so short when it could have gone so far. And there were so many parts of this movie that were so stunning, visually stunning. As you said, they film a lot of this like in real world locations, and they add in a little bit of like GFX. I thought it was like a 7 out of 10. If we're being great, it could have been like a 7, like a 10 out of 10. And there was just like something missing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the score came in a little bit lower. Even I think like having seen it twice now, I think I'm settling in somewhere between like 5.5 to 6 out of 10, and a lot of the same issues that you had. And well, I don't know if I will necessarily attribute it to just John David Washington's performance, because I do think while he plays it very stoic throughout the movie, and you kind of don't get to see him. Well, he is. There's some emotional moments like throughout the film, whether
There's
it's
some moments he does come through with the child at the
yeah,
end.
with Alfie, like
Totally.
who, by the way, like Madeline Voiles, like this is her first movie, and
She
so
was
I think
great.
she
I
stole a lot of the scenes
loved
that she
her.
was in. There were
She
definitely
was
some. There were
phenomenal.
some moments where you're like, oh man, like like when
Yeah.
when the whole ice cream sequence, like we don't have that. How about ice cream, which is in the trailer as well. But overall, I felt like the reason why this movie really underdelivered is because it kind of dabbles in a lot of themes and ideas that we have seen before in many other projects. And this is something that a lot of reviewers are talking about too. A lot of people who aren't even just reviewers, they're just talking about it in general because you watch this movie and it immediately reminds you of things like Star Wars. Obviously, you mentioned like the visuals of it. But certainly from a thematic standpoint, if you watch Blade Runners and how like the story is all about replicants and how do replicants have a soul, and like whether it's the Harrison Ford version or you watch 2049 with Ryan Gosling, or if you watch Battlestar Galactica, a show, especially the new Ronald D. Moore version that ran for like 5 seasons, and they had like this whole interspecies war where the humans created these AI robots that eventually kind of became sentient, and then they have like these robotic versions, and then they have this human-looking versions called Cylons, and they go to war with humans, And so, they explored so many themes and concepts over the course of many seasons. So whether it's Battlestar Galactica, or whether it's Blade Runner, or whether it's even like the Neil Blomkamp movies, District 9 is a movie that I think did a really good job of kind of, even though in that case it wasn't AI, it was aliens
Mm-hmm.
versus humans. But like the themes were similar. Like, aliens were like this segregated underclass of society living in the suburbs of Johannesburg, and oh no, not Johannesburg. Was it Johannesburg, or was it Cape Town in South Africa, basically? And in this movie you kind of see something similar with AI, like kind of they've been segregated to just New Asia, where they're accepted everywhere else. They're hunted, and even in New Asia they're hunted by the West and this ship in the sky, this USS Nomad, which, like a fortress in the sky theme. That definitely is also something that reminded me of another Neil Blomkamp movie called Elysium, where Matt Damon, is the lead, and they basically, all the rich people live on this ring that's orbiting Earth, and only the people who can't afford to be up there are left on the planet's surface. And so it's sort of a class warfare, sort of. That's the theme that kind of permeates throughout both Elysium and District 9. And in this movie, you kind of see that. But at the end of the day, what they were missing, and it seems like this is the case with some other projects that Gareth Edwards, the director, has done, is the characters. You couldn't really relate to the characters as much, because I felt like the movie was so busy kind of jumping around and really trying to demonstrate all of these high concept ideas, like AI versus humanity, and social and class warfare, and all of that stuff, and accepting, those who are not like you, and all of those things. Whereas it kind of forgot to really slow down in a few spots, and kind of just have us not just explore the humanity of characters who are
Mm-hmm.
humans, but humanity of the AI characters. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah.
like, let me give you a very specific example. In the movie, we see several times, we see this in flashback sequences, where Gemma Chan's character says, "Oh, growing up, like, she was orphaned, and then she
Mm-hmm.
was raised by these AI robot beings." And then she talks about this one moment where, like, this child died, and the AI robot, like, who was her adoptive mother, turned herself off out of grief. And I was like, don't just tell us. If you showed us those moments, I
Mm-hmm.
bet you that would have connected on such a deeper level with the audience
Yeah,
than
I
what we
agree.
ultimately got, because we just kind of skipped forward beyond those moments. So then the ending sequence, and like when you have that Star Trek Wrath of Khan kind of moment, where like John David Washington and Alfie are, so I keep calling him by his whole name, like Joshua and Alfie, on two sides of this like big window kind of a thing, and one of them is not going to make it. Like, it's an emotional moment nonetheless, but I think it would have landed a lot better if we had a more of an emotional grounding throughout the movie, whereas it
Yeah,
felt like
I
they were
agree.
just on the run, on the run, on the run, and we just really didn't get to interact with them as much,
And
like
also
on a human
thematically,
level.
watching it, even with the visuals, even with the story, it was giving Avatar. Did you get that at all?
I
Very much.
did. My out of theater
Yeah.
review, I mentioned like maybe like James Cameron or Christopher Nolan might have had a more
Oh,
nuanced take
so
on this,
funny. I
because it,
didn't
it
even
definitely
watch
had
out of the
Avatar.
review. It was
Yeah.
giving Avatar. That's what
Mhm.
I thought. Like, I was like 45 minutes in, and I was like, this is strongly reminiscent of the whole idea of Avatar, and these Americans coming in and trying to screw things up. I'm like, So yeah, I do totally, and I agree with you again. Like, I didn't mean to say that it was Josh, what is his name? John David Washington? John David Washington.
Yeah. Yeah.
John David
I'm
Washington.
saying
It's a pretty solid name.
yes.
I don't necessarily attribute any of this to like his lack of performance. I do think there were places that he performed. I think overall, what you are saying is what I meant, in the sense of like, it was lacking. I felt like it was lacking from his character the most, but that's also because he had to carry the heaviest weight other than Alfie. I think Alfie, bless my heart, she was so cute. But it really, it didn't follow through on so many themes, and it was so reminiscent of so many things that I really needed it to do something very new, and it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I think the theme of this movie was there were individual highlights, but like overall as a movie, it sort of underperforms, because
Yeah.
functionally, I think like if you were to read this as a story, this works. But if you're trying to make it a movie that you can connect on an emotional level, it falls short in many ways. Like Allison Janney's character, who's like one of the antagonists, is very similar to like the Colonel from Avatar, who's I forget the name of the actor who plays him. But like that whole with Jake Sully and everything, and he's like
Yeah.
the military, like you betrayed us, we gotta. And in this movie she's like, we've got a traitor to kill. Like so I definitely like got those vibes, like the James Cameron Terminator,
Mm,
and like you said, Avatar vibes. Like James Cameron's done that dystopian sci-fi for his entire career, so like
yeah.
you can point to most of his movies and be like, there's a theme that they kind of borrowed. But like it also, like when there were some other issues that I had, like some very specific things, such as like this whole movie, it not only kind of comments on AI, it not only comments on like every time you see those big rovers in like New Asia, it looks like you're watching Apocalypse Now and like the Vietnam War. And like the humans have like the air support, and like these other people, all they have are like these the small arms gun, like so that whereas they're greatly outnumbered and outgunned.
Yeah.
And then like on the other side of it, it also has this whole the nuke that goes off in LA, which kind of kicks off the whole war.
That was crazy. That
That's
was
the
a little
premise of the
creepy
movie.
to see. Yeah.
But
Mm,
like
like,
so
oh.
that's, I think, was more of like a analog to something like a 9/11, and like then America going after the terrorists, and in this
Mhm.
case like an American-led coalition is out to eliminate AI as a whole. And again, another really big idea. Unlike most movies would be happy with just putting one of these ideas center stage
Mhm.
and then just building a story around it. I think this movie, they made the mistake of trying to add too many of these ideas for a
Mhm.
movie that was only like 2 hours long. I feel like if they had another 30 or so minutes, they could have expanded upon some of these ideas a little bit more, because what ends up happening is they kind of bring this big idea at the beginning of the movie, and a lot of these ideas, and then the payoffs are sort of like, it just kind of sputters out. Like
Yeah.
the whole, oh wow, they set off the AI set off the bomb, and like the now humans are out to like eradicate them forever. And then you see that scene on the boat where Ken Watanabe's character is like, the explosion. I guess spoiler alert. The explosion was like a coding error, right? Like it was human error, and they blamed it on us. You know what's gonna happen when the war is over? AI is just gonna live with humans. Nothing's gonna happen in the West. I'm like, okay, and in the moment I was like, I kind of get, like, maybe you're trying to say that, well, really the movie's not just about the nuke; it's about so much more as the filmmaker
Yeah.
making that decision. But like from an emotional involvement standpoint, like if that's the narrative thrust of the whole movie, you kind of just sputtered like everything, and now you're like, so this is a completely illegitimate war. Well, okay, so if it's one of those false flag situations, whether it's on purpose or not, then where are we going with the story? And like nothing of the grander story changes, but I felt like that could have been a bigger turning point, and it wasn't. And it wasn't, again, it was done in a way that didn't have any kind of emotional engagement to it. And
Mhm.
that kind of plays out pretty predictably because, again, if you've seen Elysium, the third act of this movie and Elysium are so similar. Like, and it's not a movie that came out like decades ago. It came out like only like 10 or so years ago, so it's pretty recent. So again, it feels like this movie is recycling a lot of ideas. The visuals are unique and the visuals are new. It feels like a lived-in world, and when you watch some of the behind the scenes of how they made this movie, this could be like a great way for a lot of other filmmakers to go out there and be like, we don't need $100 million or
Yeah.
$1 million to
We can
make a
do this.
scale film, because and it's done in a very clever way, like in a bit of an old school way. They go on, like you said, on location, film in real locations across the world, and you get like the lighting, the authentic, like real grass, real water, real sunlight, real people, real props, and everything. And then you give it to ILM, and then ILM kind of goes in and adds all these like CGI,
Mhm.
the vehicles, the robots, and everything.
Which, in
And
a way, too, I think that speaks
totally,
to, well, I think that speaks to like filmmaking. I think we're starting to see this trend of people maybe realizing that super heavy graphics aren't always the way to go.
yeah,
And
like
so,
completely CGI worlds are
yeah, like Indiana
not as immersive.
Jones, like didn't really do that well. I mean, what are the other ones that were just like heavily
Oh,
CGI that have like,
Ant-Man and the Wasp:
oh my
Quantumania
God,
was
yeah,
heavy
like a
CGI. The
lot of these,
Flash, that was
yeah.
heavy.
Well, I
Yeah.
kind of liked Flash, but A lot of people didn't.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying like, there was CGI at every corner you turn.
Yeah.
But like it's like I think a movie like this really goes to show you that the best CGI is the CGI that you don't notice. And a lot of the
Yeah.
CGI effects in this movie are very and to be fair, like some of the CGI stuff that they're doing is like very basic stuff. Like to shoot a sequence where you shoot this like big landscape shot and then you add like a ship in the sky in
Mm-hmm.
post-production. You can do that in Adobe After Effects with no money whatsoever. You just need a 3D model and a little bit of knowledge of how to do basic compositing and motion tracking. And so you can do it as a college student, you can pull it off. So these the technical aspects of like, the real brilliance of this movie's visuals don't necessarily come from the technical achievement. It comes from the execution. And that's really fantastic because I think those techniques work on any budget. And it just goes to show you don't need like a big budget to make a movie
Mm-hmm.
that looks stunning. I just think like, for all the effort that they put in on that front, I wish that the script had been a little bit better because I did like, there was some inconsistencies even with like the AI side of things. Like the humans hated AI, but they were using a universal language translator, which is AI based. They were also using like those AI bombs that are like running in and
Mm-hmm.
kamikazing the enemy. So I'm like, well, so if the humans were so anti-AI, then you should have really doubled down and they should have absolutely no AI technology whatsoever, even reverting back and not using some AI that we today are used to, like Google's search algorithms are based on AI. Photoshop uses AI. That's been around for years
Yeah.
and years. It's only now that people are so worried about AI because we've got something like a generative AI, which has a little bit more of a transformative effect. So I think like thematically, this movie was undercooked, and then it on an emotional level underdelivered. But the visuals were fantastic, and Gareth Edwards is a good filmmaker. I mean, I don't know how much of the brilliance of Rogue One you can credit to Tony Gilroy, who worked on Andor, and that show is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But Gareth Edwards has a few good movies like Monsters on his on and Godzilla, Godzilla on his resume. So I hope that this is maybe a preview of the best that he can do, and maybe the
Mm-hmm.
best is yet to come. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much money this movie makes. It's not going to make nearly enough to necessarily justify its budget because it's already struggling at the box office. It's
Is
not
it
going
really?
to
I haven't even
make
looked.
back its budget in maybe like the first couple of weeks. It may take like a month or so, and I don't know if it's going to be profitable. But as an exercise in filmmaking, it definitely there's a few lessons to be learned here. So guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about The Creator. Is this a movie that disappointed you? Is this the movie that you loved? Even in our comments in the last few days, we've gotten some people who are like, oh, I was bored. Oh, it was fantastic, breath of fresh air. So we're getting a
Yeah.
mix, results from the audience, and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is higher than the critic score. So let us know in the comments what you thought about The Creator, and like and subscribe for more content like this. We review movies each and every week, so I'm sure we'll be talking more about other movies like this in the future. So let's talk about the MCU right now. I wanted to ask, this week I saw an article online. It was talking
Mm-hmm.
about how Marvel Studios is now taking pitches from writers to work on the new X-Men movie that they're developing. It's
Mm-hmm.
really early stages, and it looks like since the writer strike ended, now they're like, hey guys, since you can work again, come on down and give us a pitch. What do you guys want to do
Come
for
on
X-Men?
in, everybody.
So I wanted to ask you, what would you do if you were in a position as a writer and you wanted to pitch your take on the X-Men to Marvel? We've already had like literally a dozen X-Men films come out before.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of like wonder,
Mm-hmm.
like, can they do something new with the X-Men property at this
Mm-hmm.
point? Especially in the
Yeah.
MCU where like some of the advantages of the X-Men in their own universe was that they were like the standouts, like they were the non-humans. Like X-Men has always been like a metaphor on racism and still racial stereotyping. Whereas in the world of the MCU, you've got heroes of all kinds that are not like they don't look like humans. They maybe aren't even humans at all. And they've got a sense of acceptance, and like people are going around getting autographs from the Hulk. They're going to conventions and stuff like in Miss Marvel. So do you think that metaphor of the X-Men can really land? And I mean, how would you do X-Men today in the MCU?
I was a big fan of the old school X-Men. I loved Holly Bailey. Holly Bailey, not Holly Bailey, Holly Berry. I loved Holly Berry. I mean, like all of the OGs. I loved X-Men growing up. Um, the newer X-Men movies have kind of been like the origin story movies have kind of been like, Okay, whatever. Okay, Sophie Turner, whatever you want. Um, and like I don't have an answer for you, Dan. I don't know if I would do it. I think I would leave them be for a little bit. I feel like they've milked the X-Men for like quite a lot, and continuing to do so just reeks of capitalism. So
It's difficult to, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how they implement the idea of the X-Men and like the MCU, particularly if they don't reboot the MCU, right? Because we are speculating that what is it, Avengers: Secret Wars is going to be sort of like a soft reboot, if anything, where a bunch of characters are gonna bite the dust, and a bunch of characters are going to recast. They might retcon some things, and then here come the X-Men. I mean, X-Men have been in the Marvel Studios stable of characters since 2019 when Disney bought Fox, and people have been clamoring for mutants in the MCU. You know, in Miss Marvel, they sort of said, "Hey, Miss Marvel is a mutant," and so now that's a thing. And I'm sure they're going to expand upon that in the Marvels movie that's coming out later this year. But they're not in a rush to fill this job. It looks like they might make a decision by the early months of 2024. What does concern me a little bit though is that they're looking to take pitches now. I wonder like what they have been doing this entire time. Like usually Marvel and Kevin Feige and his inner trust have this vision like years in advance about what they want to do with a movie like an X-Men movie, which like
I mean,
Fantastic Four. These are big characters, some of
it
the most popular in Marvel's
could
history.
just mean that they want to leave space for a new voice, a new
Yeah.
brush of fresh air. We're speaking English today.
Breath of fresh air. Yes.
Yes, they're really looking for new life. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily mean, and I've known writers that have worked on Marvel projects before. They will hop around from writer to writer until they get exactly what they want, and usually like it's a multi-writer situation. You have one main writer and then you have like 18 others.
Like a writer's room, yeah.
And so, I mean, them taking pitches could just mean we don't know where we want this to go. We do need something new. We all loved the old X-Men because they were phenomenal. And it could just be that they're sort of looking around to see what they can do versus not necessarily, it just doesn't mean that they don't have anything going on in the back end. So,
yeah, that's definitely both concerning and reassuring in some ways because it means that they're making progress. It also probably means that they aren't as far along as you thought they were. I hope that we'll get some sort of news about where the X-Men movie is going to land. Right now, they still have so much on their calendar, especially with movies being pushed back because of the actors strike. That whatever X-Men movie comes out, whenever it comes out, it's not coming out for at least the next 3 or 4 years minimum. So it's still a ways off. But it's like I said, the positive is that they're working on it. We definitely there's many reasons why like we need a new version of X-Men, even the comic version of the X-Men. Like for example, Charles Xavier and Magneto can't be people who are around in the 60s anymore because that would mean that they were like 90 years old today. So if these X-Men are going to be in the present day MCU, you can't have it that Magneto grew up in a Nazi war camp and was part of the Holocaust, and that's where his family perished, and that's his origin story, because that would just age him out of potentially taking part in the MCU unless they pull off one of those Captain America things where he got went in the ice and then came out, and therefore like he's not super old.
I doubt
And
it. That would be so far from any of the storylines.
yeah, so I just feel like they're gonna like have to update it, and I think just as a franchise as a whole has to kind of move forward in time.
Update it or pass the torch.
Yeah, and the Deadpool movie, the Deadpool 3, it's looking like it's bringing back a lot of those old Fox X-Men characters and the actors and kind of giving them their final send off. And I'm sure some of them might pop up in like Avengers: Secret Wars because they're gonna need all the characters they can get. So we'll get more of a conclusion on that version of X-Men that so many of us grew up loving. So that now it will hopefully leave room for them to kind of start fresh with something completely different and new that has the same sort of familiar elements that we have loved about the X-Men from the past, but at the same time is charting new ground for the future, a future that has been needed for this franchise for quite some time anyway. So right now, let's just switch over to talking about the DCU as we usually do. And the question today that I have for you is, how can the DC Studios shed the DCEU baggage before the DCU starts. And what I mean by that is it seems like all of that Snyderverse, fandom, maybe let's call the Snyderverse fandom, like all the hashtags and everything, that's still very prominent out there. And it doesn't help that with James Gunn, like he responds to a lot of these like questions, and whether he's shooting down rumors or confirming things. He's been caught like saying things in the past where, like he mentioned that he met with Ben Affleck and he would love to work with us in the future sometime. Of course, we are open to working with him. And then like Ben Affleck got interviewed about another project, and they asked him about, well, would you want to do this thing with DC? Like James Gunn said this, and that, and he was like, I don't think I'm going to be a good fit for what they're going for. And so then people were like, well, one of those people like said, like clearly those two statements don't add up. So we're kind of like in this like gray area right now where the DCU hasn't really started yet and the DCEU is still wrapping up. But do you think the DC studios can really shake that baggage and start fresh, or are we just going to drag some of that along for the first few years of the new DCU continuity?
Well, he's already announced that like 3 of the characters are moving forward, right? He's going to continue on with Peacemaker, he's going to continue on with Blue Beetle, and he's going to continue on with, there was one more character.
Amanda Waller.
Yeah, Viola Davis's character. So all 3 of those actors are moving forward. He's already announced casting for the new Superman Legacy. That's a new fresh slate. Isn't that supposed to sort of mark the beginning of the new?
It is. Yeah, I think Creature Commando is coming out next year, which is an animated show. It's meant to be like an aperitif or an appetizer. And then Superman Legacy, the live action movie, is going to kick it off and, proper like the new DCU continuity. And he has said that that's kind of the beginning of the new canon. And everything up until that point is not going to count. So there is a bit that it kind of creates this hard line in the sand.
Yeah.
But like from a audience perception standpoint, even like these recent DC movies that have been like really struggling at the box office, I feel like that might still have a bit of a knock-on effect that when Superman Legacy comes out, it may struggle because people are still maybe not entirely sure about DC movies. Even though like the Batman made a ton of money, like over $700 million, and Joker made $1 billion, and we are getting another Joker and a Batman movie. People know that those are completely disconnected from those extended universe movies. But now that we're getting a new connected universe, I mean, do you think James Gunn has enough time between now and then to really get the fans on board? Not to I mean, there's going to be always that like vocal minority that's just going to keep, wanting to wave that flag of let's get Zack Snyder back on the saddle and let's get him back in the DC world, which I don't even know if Zack Snyder is interested right now.
I just feel like at this point, they need to let it go. Let it go. Everybody just needs to let it go. Let it go. Because I am seeing all these crazy articles about people pulling apart threads and stuff like that about Zack Snyder coming back. I'm like, people, like he's moved on. Let him live his life. Let him live his life.
Yeah, he went through such a traumatic experience losing a child through that whole process. And then not being able to work on this movie, and then of course he got closure, I think. So that's a good thing. And Warner Brothers has done like that whole fan event earlier this year where they did a screening and a Q&A with him for all of his movies that he did, like whether it was the Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and his version of the Justice League movie. So he's gotten closure on a couple of occasions. I think if I were him, I would be like, he's happy to have the creative control and flexibility to do what he's doing at Netflix. That I don't know if he would even want. I mean, he said that he'd be open to doing this, that coming back and working on his version of the stories for DC. But I just don't know if there's any future of him coming back and doing it in movie form, at least not in the near future. And then if not in the near future, then a lot of the actors are probably going to have moved on, if not already have moved on to other things that they're
and the other issue with that delay is like the timing. Like age is real. You can only play a superhero as long as you can play the age that superhero remains.
Yeah. Although, like, hey, Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine.
Superman doesn't. Well, look.
20 years on.
Well, Hugh Jackman's character is Wolverine ages, right?
That's true.
He's not supposed to be this immovable sort of character, whereas Superman is, and Wonder Woman, she is also immortal. So, like, those two...
Well, I don't think Superman is meant to be immortal, but, like, I see your point. Yeah,
like, you can't You
I mean,
can't.
I think what you're saying is both true and not true because like we live in a world where Michael Keaton just returned to play Batman, and he's
But
like,
as Batman, Batman ages. He's a real
okay,
human.
fair. You're right.
I
You're
was
right.
like, yeah.
Yes. Okay. But there's also been like not rumors but speculation rather, because James Gunn did mention pretty early on when he signed on, especially when he was like, "Hey, we met with Henry Cavill,
Mhm.
and we loved his work, and we told him face to face like, hey, we're going to be moving in a different direction with Superman," and then Henry Cavill said as much on his social media, and at the time he also mentioned, James Gunn did, that he's open to collaborating with Henry Cavill in the future on other projects and maybe having him come back in the DC fold and maybe play a different character, maybe another hero, another villain. And so people have been speculating, like, do you think Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, and depending on what happens with Gal Gadot, because that's still a bit in flux whether she's going to
Yeah,
continue in the role of Wonder Woman or not, do you think those actors who were previously, or even like Jesse Eisenberg, who played Lex Luthor, would they be back in the new DCU at some point? Maybe James Gunn has them cast in a different role?
I would hope not. Honestly, that sort of recasting of roles like that and having to see his face but not see him play the role that we've always seen him play, it personally, I can never seem to get past it. It almost reminds me of when in like a third movie of a 3-movie franchise they've recast one of the main leads. Like I just can't see past it. Like I literally the whole way am just paying attention to that. So for my own viewership enjoyment,
Sensibilities?
I hope not. I'm like, I don't want to have to be thinking about why is he playing this character? I preferred him as Superman. Like, no.
It's certainly going to draw comparisons. That's true. That's true. I mean, they may be able to do that with some actors that weren't maybe playing the super high profile
Yeah,
roles,
but
like
the high
maybe,
profile roles, there's just no way.
yeah,
No
that, like,
way.
it's probably gonna draw more controversy and criticism than it's gonna draw like praise, unless of course we may get Ben Affleck or Henry Cavill coming back in a
Mm-hmm.
character and that they completely knock out of the park, and people are like, oh wow, that was really good, but the chances of that happening usually are pretty slim. So while I don't see that it being an impossibility, and certainly it's not just a matter of it whether James Gunn wants to do it. It's also a matter of if these actors want to come back and play those roles, because it's always a two-way street when it comes to
Yeah.
casting. So yeah, I think it's a possibility, and certainly something James Gunn might be interested in doing. Like you said, those main players, especially like the Trinity, the Trinity being Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, those actors, they probably won't take part in the new franchise unless maybe they do like one of those crossovers where they like bring in, like the DCEU was its own multiverse kind of a
I
section,
hope they
and they're
don't
doing a
do
big
that.
crossover. But
That's too
I
many
can see that
multiverses.
maybe down the road, but even that might be like years away. Like we might be talking
Yeah,
decades down the road.
obviously they
So
sort of tease that in the Flash, but
yeah.
I really hope they don't jump on that train too, because then every single movie I'm watching has to
Well,
be like so much
yeah.
more than
There's a
just
lot
a
of
good
multiverse
movie. And I'm
going
like,
on right now.
I could
Yeah.
do without another multiverse. I just
Yeah.
could.
Well, I don't think they're going to be doing that anytime soon. If they do it, they have to first
Yeah.
establish this new universe and really like entrench us in that new story before
Yeah.
they even think about harkening back to some other iteration. Like Marvel, like they're 15 odd years into their universe, and now they're doing those crossovers with like the older X-Men characters and like the Fantastic Four, like some of the older iterations of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think they might do it, but that might be like a decade or so away. And then at that point, who knows? Maybe like the multiverse trend is long dead and gone, so people are not so concerned about it. But
Sure.
guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about the idea that there's a lot of DCEU baggage that's still hanging around the new DC studios. Is that something that they will be able to get rid of before they kick off the new DCU in 2024 and 2025 with Creature Commandos and Superman Legacy? Let us know in the comments what you think. And of course, like and subscribe for more content like this. We're talking about DC news and updates here each and every day of the week. So we'll be back here for more in the coming days, weeks, and hopefully years to come. So let's look ahead to next week. We're talking about The Exorcist Believer. It's a horror movie that had to move out of Friday the 13th in October. So it's already
We got a T Swift's way, y'all.
yeah, it's already had a bit of that, a bit of what would you call it, adversity let's say, to deal with. It's a
Yeah.
franchise that I think was long dead, but clearly being revived for another movie. I
It
don't know
looks
if this new movie is connected to the old
extra
one.
spooky. So
It's
there's that.
but in a world where like Saw X just came out and it's actually getting some decent reviews, we know
Yeah.
they're working on some new Final Destination projects. Of course, we've gotten like new Halloween movies, new scary movies. All these old horror classic franchises have been revived for the better or for the worse. Now comes the turn for The Exorcist, probably one of the most iconic horror franchises of all time, to come back with a new iteration. Do you think this is a movie that's going to draw enough attention? Now, Blumhouse, they did the best that they could to kind of position it in a time of year where it would have the highest chances of success. Even
Yeah.
if it is coming out a week sooner, I mean, you could still technically go see it on October the 13th because it's going to be playing next week. And if you don't want to watch Taylor Swift, I'm sure you can go watch it.
Hmm.
So, what are the chances of this movie actually having a good run? And then, do you think, based on the trailers alone, that this looks like a good movie?
The trailers look creepy. They have been marketing the crap out of this movie for months, months, months. I've seen the trailers for, I want to say, last 3 to 4 months of me going to the movie theater. So they've been really plugging the trailers. It looks creepy, to say the least, but like, we'll see. You never know. It could be terrible. It's always hit or miss with these.
I actually, my best part of the trailer is when the logo pops up at the end and you get that classic Exorcist like music.
Mm.
And it kind of ends on that flash to the black and white and then slides zoom in and then you hear the music and you see the logo.
Yeah.
So every time it kind of harkens back to the classic, I think that's like the nostalgia in me kind of goes for that. But as a movie, the trailers haven't impressed me all that much. Like, for example, if you remove the name The Exorcist from this movie, it could look like any other horror movie. It doesn't look particularly original. And part of that probably has to do with it's one of The Exorcist is one of those movies that kind of feels like watching a Romeo and Juliet. Because Romeo and Juliet like is a story that's been around for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably seen like a million different iterations of it, and at this point, the basic tropes are cliched. And that's kind of what The Exorcist has become in the horror genre
Yeah.
in the years since it became this groundbreaking movie. So I don't think there's a whole lot that they can do that to make it groundbreaking. I mean, granted, we have seen plenty of horror movies that have, defied logic and done something new and interesting in recent years, like Smile being one, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always the chance, and like, even a franchise like Saw, like which has had some pretty terrible recent iterations, seems like Saw X is bucking the trend. So there's always a possibility that it can do better than people expected. And certainly, even if it is just counter programming to Taylor Swift of all things next week, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people it's in the mood for Halloween going out to see this movie in a theater. It's not the only Halloween movie out this time of year either. There's a lot of horror movies coming out. So yeah, hopefully we'll do well. I mean, we'll see.
We'll
Like
see.
I'm sure we'll
We'll
be
see
talking
it.
about it next week.
Yeah.
There's also a couple of other movies that are coming out. Like there's a John Cena movie coming out called Freelance, and then there's this romance sci-fi movie coming out called Foe. But I don't think any of those movies are gonna beat Exorcist at the box office. And I don't even know if The Exorcist, quite frankly, is gonna be the biggest movie next week because there's still the creators around and there's a few other things that are holdover from the past few weeks. So guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about The Exorcist Believer. It's finally here. It's a week early, and you know what? It's October. Halloween's in the air, and so now come the time for all these horror franchises, and The Exorcist is certainly one of the most iconic. So are you gonna go watch it in a theater? Or are you going to wait for it until October the 13th? Or are you going to wait for it until it comes out on digital or streaming? Let us know in the comments what you think. And of course, like and subscribe for more content like this. We'll be back next week with so much more, talking about all kinds of movies for the love of movies. Angelina, it's been nice talking to you. It's been another great week here.
Yeah, thank you so
And
much.
hopefully we'll get some good news with the actors next week.
Yeah,
too.
we'll see tomorrow. Hopefully, this week in general. We'll just hope.
Yeah, it always feels like, oh yes, onto the table. Like everybody's expecting them to sign the contract.
I
I'm
know.
like, probably
But
going to
honestly,
take a few days.
auditions like picked way back up once the WGA settled. So I feel like
Yeah.
it's close.
Yes, it feels like there's the positive energy in the air,
Yeah.
and people are anticipating that this won't quite be as long a process. So yeah, hopefully things work out, and we're back on track. And at this point, we've already seen a lot of movies move their release dates, so hopefully we won't have to see any more of that, because then, it starts to become a situation where not only is it hurting the people who work on these movies, but the fans, they're like, how much longer am I gonna have to wait to watch Dune Part 2? Like, it needs to be here already. So, okay. Well, hopefully we'll have good news on all fronts next week. And until then, guys, it's been great talking to you, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Bye, guys.